eating this year was awesome! I mean, look at all this candy I got.
Wow, that's awesome. So what happens to all the sugar that we're eating? Like, is it anything happen?
I don't know.
After eating all the Halloween candy that the two of us are going to eat this whole weekend, your blood sugar becomes high. As this blood gets into the glomerulus, the glucose molecule is filtered through the glomerulus because it's smaller than 5 nanometers, then gets into the Bowman capsule. From there, the proximal convoluted tubule. While in the proximal convoluted tubule, some of the glucose is reabsorbed by the glucose sodium transport of the epithelial cells of the proximal convoluted tubule.
Now let's look at a close-up view of what is actually happening to glucose in the renal epithelial cells during reabsorption. The first step in glucose reabsorption is to create the sodium concentration gradient. This is done using the sodium-potassium ATPase, or the sodium-potassium pump, found in the peritubular lumen facing the peritubular capillary blood. ATP directly powers the sodium-potassium pump, actively forcing 3 sodium ions out of the cell and into the interstitial fluid, and 2 potassium ions into the cell. Once in the cell, potassium ions leak out via leaky channels to maintain the net negative charge inside the cell.
The second step in glucose reabsorption occurs the sodium-glucose cotransporter in the luminal membrane. Now that there is a low concentration of sodium inside the cell, 2 sodium ions passively move from the lumen into the cell, transporting 1 glucose molecule with it.
Once glucose gets inside the cell through cotransportation, glucose moves into the peritubular capillary blood by facilitated diffusion. Because glucose is moving down its concentration gradient, no energy is needed. The glomerulus filters almost 14,500 milligrams of glucose every day, but how much is actually reabsorbed? The transport maximum represents the maximum number of cotransport proteins available to move glucose from the lumen into the renal epithelial cells. The transport maximum will be very high for substances the body needs, like glucose, and low for substances the body does not recognize. Only a specific amount of glucose can be reabsorbed because there is a limited number of cotransport proteins available. If the concentration of glucose is less than 200 milligrams per deciliter, then it is all reabsorbed. The cotransport proteins are fully saturated and are at a transport maximum when the concentration of glucose exceeds 350 milligrams per deciliter. When this happens, the excess glucose is excreted in the urine. Okay, so we're going to use balloons to show the relationship between glucose and sodium in the filtrate and how the cotransporter works. So for this example, glucose is going to be our pink balloon and sodium is going to be our black balloon. Okay. I'm sorry, filtrate. I'm fully saturated with glucose. I can no longer accept anything else. I'm at my transport maximum. In the case of diabetes, there is an issue with production or use of insulin, leading to hyperglycemia or high blood sugar. One of the major signs is glycosuria, or the presence of glucose in the urine. This occurs when the concentration of blood sugar approaches the transport maximum, forcing the excess glucose to be excreted as waste through urine. Another condition that can be detected in the urine is diabetic ketoacidosis. Because insulin is not working to convert glucose into energy, the body may begin burning off fat as an alternate source. Burning fat for fuel produces ketones as a byproduct, which causes blood to become dangerously acidic. At-home tests for patients with diabetes can test urine for ketones. Early detection is important because diabetic ketoacidosis can be fatal if not caught and treated quickly. Although urinalysis is a quick and effective way to detect diabetes and other related conditions like glycosuria and ketoacidosis, the most definitive diagnosis will come from blood testing.